Exactly.
Let's talk about some of the other, so the other part that comes into your purview, and let's start with, if we can, the natural, the environment, because every day, you know, I just heard yesterday, part of Antarctica broke away. I mean, this global warming, these issues, they're really critical.
They are critical, and I think as we look at things like climate change, part of that is where people live, where people work, how they travel, how much they use cars. That's going to be a lot of the basis for our planning process, is how does this affect our environment.
Yeah.
We're very concerned about water issues in our agency, both the supply of water, how much we have, and the quality of water. We look at what's happened with Lake Michigan over the last several months in some of the stories, and we say, you know, business has followed all the rules, but the result isn't what we want.
And you work with Terry O'Brien, the Water Reclamation District, those folks as well?
Right, we work with all of those folks about how we do that. We look at a lake that's right out down the street here and say, how do we have water supply issues? How do we have concerns about that? But over the years, that's going to be a concern. It's not a concern today, but that's why you plan to 2040 and 2050.
The usage of land, so critical in how we use it. You guys are addressing that.
We are addressing that. And we know that there will be, if we're going to add that many more people, some expansion in suburban areas. But we also need to talk about how we use existing resources, how we build back the strong communities that once existed and make them attractive again.
So green space comes into play. We need parks.
We absolutely need parks. Parks and open space are the only thing that our residents seem to want to vote for, spending money on from government. They value that open space and that park system. So we really need to focus on how we make a better system, not just here in Chicago, but across the region.
Tell me a little bit about the Bloomington Trail in that part of the world, how that affects plans for that.
Well, the plans for that are ongoing throughout as we look at how we're going to make this all come together. It can't be a standalone project, and that's where we're concerned. That process will move along. There's people that are very interested in how that's happening, but our view is how do we look at that in its interconnections throughout the region, throughout the state.
Okay, and again, this is part of the process that will continue
absolutely part of the process.
You also look at housing issues.
We do. Housing is a key issue for us as we look at where people live and where people work, at the kinds of jobs that we're creating in northeastern Illinois, and what kind of housing we need for that. We want to have communities that have a nice mix of housing. When we talk about affordable housing, it's not just federally designated affordable, but it's working class housing, it's rental housing, and it's having a high-end housing that makes the kind of community work well together.
Does preservation play a role? Because there's the future and there's planning, there's also the great architectural homes of the past.
Right, and I think we're seeing a lot of that across the region now of when we look at tear downs and how we preserve some of the architectural integrity of our communities. People in Chicago and the Chicago area really understand architecture, unlike most cities, and they appreciate it.
The birth of the skyscraper here.
Exactly. So it's very important that we look at preservation, that we look at how we preserve those assets that we really have and want to keep.
And in addition to where people live and what they live in, there's the how they live, and you're addressing human services, social services.
We are addressing human services. As we look at, for example, an aging population, not all of our seniors...
You looked at me when you said that.
And to look at myself very soon. Not all of our seniors want to move to Florida anymore. They want to retire here. And so what do we have to think about in providing them transportation when they don't drive? How do we get them to the doctor in a different way? What kind of social activities do they want? So we really need to think when we talk about a successful region about how to keep those seniors in place.
It really is from soup to nuts. I mean,
Absolutely.
Everything from how we get around, where we live, how we live, and all of that. Let's talk about the involvement people have the internet. I was fascinated as I looked at the website about Imagine That, and where you actually reach out, tell folks what they get to tell you.
Right.
Creative thinking.
We are. We're asking people to really think about what they want in 2040, and we've got a couple of really nice things happening now. We had a photography contest where we had people take pictures of what they value in the region. That helps us think about what's important. And we saw things like open space, and we saw things like the real downtowns of communities. We have a pilot program going on with 3 schools here in the Chicago region, and they're looking at, we've asked them to think about what they would like life to be in 2040. And it's an elementary school and a middle school and a high school, and they're doing it through artwork, and they're doing it through dance, and they're doing it through music.
You got to get people involved early, right? I mean, these are folks who are truly living in 2040.
It's their future,
yeah.
And it really is, and that's why we think it's so important to reach out to young people and have them tell us what they care about.
On the website, this whole area is under the heading of the Idea Zone.
Right. It is. We're really trying to get people to think differently. We say we don't want to talk about what is, we want to talk about what can be.
Yeah.
And so we're really looking for anything that people have as ideas about. You know, we don't know exactly what 2040 is going to look like. So let's help think about
Let's see
how
what
it
we
might.
want. Let's help shape what it's
Exactly.
going to look like. When does the plan get complete? What's the next phase?
The next phase of the plan is that we will adopt what we're calling a vision for the region in June. So we've been working with all of our partners and with the public about tell us what you like, the photography contest, et cetera. So we'll adapt that in June. I think that's pretty easy. I think this region shares a vision pretty much of what we all want.
Ultimately, the legislature has to pass on this plan.
No, it's
Okay.
a locally adopted plan.
Ah, okay.
Obviously, some of the money to implement will have to come from Springfield.
Right.
But
You're not going to keep them out of it.
Right, but the plan is adopted here by our leaders. So the next phase really is to talk about the strategies it takes to get there. And we'll be doing that over the summer of next year in conjunction with the Burnham Centennial.
Daniel Burnham, the planner of the city of Chicago.
The 100th anniversary of the plan of Chicago is in 2009, and so we're really using that as a way to reach the public to talk about not only what he did, but then what's the next step.
All right, Randy Blankenhorn, if you would please come back and give us more updates as we go.
Great.
Because you and I will be around in 2040. We've got to be ready for it.
That's right. Thanks, Paul.
All right. That's a little bit about what Chicago is going to look like in the future. We're going to be back in just about 2 minutes of your future. Stay with us.
You're watching the Comcast Network, CN 100, Chicago.